In this lesson, we're going to take a look at expanding the single shot to having multiple products in one shot. In this case, we have some shoes, and we have to make sure that we're going to keep some kind of continuity. The client looks for continuity between one shot and another. Over the years of shooting catalogs, I have found that sometimes you're shooting a page of a catalog in 1 month, and then all of a sudden the product that goes across from it isn't shot till the next month because it wasn't available then, or it could be next year. So you want to make the photography look like it was all shot on the same day, even if it had 300 days between the two. That's the art of what we do. So we're taking in consideration the position. So a lot of times I will use a ruler. If I'm setting one shot, I may put a ruler down on the set, pull a shot out when I'm changing from one shot, go back, and then put the image right back in again to make sure that we're holding the exact angle of a certain shoe. So in this case, if I was doing several shots in a row that had maybe 3 shoes in it, I would put a ruler on each of these shoes before I would change out the product. I'm going to go ahead and start by, we went ahead and put the regular 90mm lens without the 1.4 converter. The 1.4 converter was a little bit too long for this shot, so 90mm lens at this distance is actually a very nice shot. We've got all our tools ready to go if we need it. Again, we have the shot simple light. The light is backlighting it. I'm trying to show as much shape from back to front. Now, I picked these specific ones because I see a little bit of a challenge here. We have a white shoe, a gray shoe, and a black shoe. We've got them all in the same shot. And there is no compromise. There is no, well, we shoot for the white shoe and the black shoe is with the black shoe and we have to live with that. The key thing is we, with digital photography, can shoot the image in elements. So I can shoot what's best for the overall shot, and then I can shoot some other segments that I could easily drop in, because the beauty of still life photography on a tripod is that I can shoot as many different images, or shoot one image that I have to process several different ways and then cut them together. I can cut and draw selection around any part of photograph A, hold my shift key down, drag that into the next picture, and it perfectly aligns itself back into the same XY coordinated spot on picture number B. So I can shoot one shot for the overall. I can shoot one shot to light up some chrome that needs to be chrome. If I say right here that this shoe, the black shoe, is blocking the light, I can put a white card in the photograph between the two. I can take the shoe out of the photograph and shoot the shoe by itself, knowing that I'm only going to use just that chrome area. And I'm going to paint these areas together, because the client, today's client, does not have any compromises. They want their cake and eat it too. They want it to be perfect on all ends. So I've got a very long range of from black to white to get all the detail in at the same time. So first thing I'll do is come to the set, and I'm going to go ahead and open up my live video focus. I'll go Tools, Remote Live Shooting, so I can bring up what you can see in the camera, and I'll switch over from auto. I like to go right to the type of light we're using, tungsten. You notice I'm not applying the color back to the real shots. I'm just using it for the view. Now, I can see that my arrangement is not so great, so I'm going to technically, when you're working in the set, you can have yourself working on the set while the art director is looking at the screen. So they can say, no, right, more, got it, leave it there, move the next one. They're not in your shot. They're not coming along and tripping into your tripod. They're not bumping into things. It's much easier. If the shot is tethered to a rolling cart with a larger screen, they can sit off the set and look at that. It's really, really great for when you're shooting people. The client can just see one shot right after another on the screen, stays out of your way. So I'm going to come around here. I need to do a little bit of an arrangement. I want to get these things looking good. So I can see my focus is not very good, so I'm going to go and focus a little better. And the angles are not quite exactly right. I'm trying not to have any overlap between the shoes. I'm just saying, just in case the client decides later that they want to take one of those shoes out, if I had one overlapping the other, that would lead myself to more retouching. So they could always cut the shoes out and put them closer together, but they can't pull them apart. So I think about the worst case scenario. It's kind of crazy that I do that. I call this technique way of the fast retreat. I think about how I'm going to get out of the worst case scenario of any change the client may have after the fact, and I try to think about that before I take the picture so that I have a sort of a retreating route to take to get me what I need for the client. In this case, I can see from looking over the set that the 3 shoes are shot fairly good angle. If I come to the camera, I can see now that obviously it's not. From the set it looked good, but here the middle shoe is a little overlapped. with the black shoe, so I'm going to move that over a little bit into here. Obviously, I'm having to come back and forth a little bit. It's a little too far. I'll get that close, right there. And that should be good for a starting point. Now, I can focus the lens. In this case, I've got the, let me come around this side here. In this case, I've got the lens set for tilt to go down. So if we're looking at the way the camera's set like this, we want to tilt the lens down to increase our depth of field from front to back. Technically, what I want to get sharp in the front of the shot is literally the front part of this shoe and say the middle part of this shoe back in here. I want to bring that on the same plane so that as I focus through to this shoe, it'll catch this part, this part, and this part with the rest of depth of field. Now, depth of field works with 1/3 in front, 2/3 in back. So as I have to find the closest spot of focus, the farthest spot of focus, and then I sort of find the 1/3 of the way through. So if I come back to my camera lens here, I can see on my screen live focus, I'll focus to the front. I can see that the front of the shoe, I'm going to go ahead, I have it no tilt at all. I'm going to go ahead and tilt the camera lens forward a little bit. Now, it doesn't take a lot. You think you need a lot, but just even the slightest bit is exaggerated. So now I'll come back and refocus again, and I can see that I'm focused on the front of that black shoe, and I'm going to turn that in a little bit more. That's a little too much right there, and I'll focus that a little bit more right there, and that is looking pretty good. So that my whole plane of focus, this is the closest thing is right here, and the farthest thing is right about there. So I have a very, very slight change of lens focusing here. So I should be able to pull focus with this with no problem. Even though the shoes are at the same angle from the point of view of the lens, I can see that this one looks like it's not turned as much. So I'm going to come to the set. I'm going to turn this. It's more of an optical thing. I got to turn it so it looks right. I'm going to pull this one in just a little bit and turn that one a little bit more and see how that looks for us. And I think that is pretty good. I like the white one just turned a little bit more. I think we're about ready to shoot the first shot here. Now, again, I have my backlight. It's giving me that nice light there. To not make this light work so much, I'm going to come around here and bring my side light in. I have them set fairly equal power. They're both set at 100 watt seconds. Now, in the days of 8x10 film and 4x5 film, we needed 3,000 watt power packs, and we were popping them 6 or 7 times to get one good exposure. We were shooting like F64 and shooting 5 pops, 8 pops, 12 pops of the lights, building exposure to get the depth of field. With digital SLR photography, it's way too much light, so we can get away with a lot less light. I choose these particular kinds of lights because I can take these watt seconds down to 5 watt seconds to 300 watt seconds, and that's really all the light I'll ever need to get a good clean depth of field at f/22. I'm not trying to shoot at f/64 anymore like I did with the bigger view cameras. So I've got them both set at a fairly low number, and they're both set at 100. And another reason why they're at the same number is as the softbox modifies the light, we're going through basically a 3-foot by 4-foot softbox and a 2-foot by 3-foot softbox for the side light. I can actually see what the light is doing. If they're both at the same amount of power, the modeling light is giving us the same amount of visual feedback. So I can see that this is actually going to look like what I see. I learned my photography craft using what we call hot lights, tungsten lights, back in the 70s, and where we say what you see is what you get. With strobe, I can adjust the power up or down, and I can increase this light so that when the light fires, it's much different than what I see. When I'm trying to help light the image, I like to have them at the same power to start with if I can, and then if it isn't working, then I will boost or take down the power of a light. So let's go ahead and we're going to take a rough shot. We obviously said that this shoe in here is not getting anywhere near as much light, so I'm going to drop my fill card in here and see if make sure we're not in the shot, which we're not. Let me get this other stuff off the set here, right there. And that's looking pretty good right here. I don't know how well that white shoe in the middle is getting reflections. We'll make a determination once we see that. I'm going to go ahead and clamp this card so we don't fall in the set like I was doing. And this gives us a pretty good sturdiness here. Now, I'll clear the meter. I'm going to focus. In this case, I'm going to turn the dial, the round dome, a little bit back toward the light because I'm sort of mixing the above light, the side light, and coming back to camera. It's going to give me a good medium reading here. Could just fire it right from here. And I'm reading right at 22.5. So plenty That's right at the point. I don't want to be at the smallest f-stop. This camera shoots at f32. I'd like to be more like 22, 16.5. We don't always want to be at the smallest f-stop. I think the best quality is going to be one of the middle f-stops. But in this case, I need the depth of field, so I want to try to pick something about that close. So let's go ahead and see what it looks like at f22. I'll get out of the live focus. And I am at 125th at f20. We'll just knock that up to, let's see what it looks like at 22 to start with. And take a picture, get us in the ballpark here. It's bringing the image in, and we're looking at it actually in the bridge as the image comes in. And this will be my new image right here. And actually, that's looking very, very good for the first shot. The thing I'm looking for here is that the shoes actually don't touch each other, so the client would have the ability to pull any one of these out as a single shot. As I look at the chrome across the shot, I don't see, actually we're being very, very lucky that the chrome is working pretty good across the silver shoe, so I don't think I'm going to have any issue with that. I'm getting some nice light. I'm getting some good detail in here. Now, if I need a little bit more detail somewhere, what I could do is use a handheld mirror. I have all different kinds of mirrors. This is nothing more, and they've been with me for 20-some years. You can see how beat up it is. These are mirrors that they're just mirrored tiles from Home Depot. You can buy them, small box of these things, and they're just plastic tiles. You can cut them up, and I tape them together. And if I need a little more light or more highlight, I can come in here and add that right to the shoe. Let's put that on live focus for a second so we can see what that really does. Again, let's put that here, and Tools, Remote Live Shooting. You can see literally, as I take this mirror in here, you can see sometimes the client will want some specular highlight, the highlight that comes from the light source itself. This happens a lot with leather, where it looks too matte finish and they want more specularity to it. So I may come in here and do a shot with just a little bit of a mirror to add a little specularity to that, right into that side of that black shoe. And actually, it looks like if I just put that mirror right there, it's going to really be just right. So I'm going to put this mirror right in here just to see if we get just a few specular highlights right where you can see literally right in there as it's going. Now the other card is still doing a good job of filling in. Now, I got enough light on that black shoe, but what about that white shoe? What if that white shoe had too much light on it? That's where these different flags and dots come in. Different companies make them either solid to block the light completely or a screen so that we can knock some of that light back. Now I could, of course, in the studio on a real catalog shoot, when I'm not demonstrating something, I would bring it in on a boom arm coming in from the back side of the set. Technically, you're going to come in here and either shoot you can see literally on the live focus, as I move that light around, you can see it block. If that's too much, I can scale it back. Knowing not to get it in the shot, down in here, I don't care if I'm out in the background area, I just don't want to be covering up a shoe. But if I need to, I can literally stand right here with my cable release and say, let's do a before and after. Let's see if this actually works. We've got some nice highlights on the black shoe with the mirror. I got plenty of fill going on with the white card. Let's take one picture like so, and then we'll do one shot here where I'll come in and just block a little bit of that light coming in. And even if I had to cover that other shoe up, I could paint that information back in. I'll put that right here. Okay, and let's look at the two shots on the screen here and see if we actually can see a difference between that. It might not be very visible, but it might be by the numbers. There's with the card and without the card. I can literally see. Let's open both of them up in the actual Adobe Camera Raw. So I'm going to click on the first image, and I'm going to click over to the second image here, and hold my Command key and select both, and do a Command R. That will open both of them up at the same time. And I can see probably as I go between them, just looking at that white shoe. And go to the second one and blow that one up. As I go back and forth, you can see how it got a little darker in here. Pulling a little more information. The numbers now are reading 227. The highlights, 220s, 230s. Which is really good white detail, and if I need a little bit more, it gives me a chance to, since I'm shooting a raw file, it's not going to hurt the file if I punch that up a teeny bit in processing, but I don't want to go over. I can't bring back the 255. So ideally, I want these areas to be, that I know I need detail in it, to be around 230, 235, knowing that after 240, I'm losing that detail. 245, it's gone. Between 245 and 255, I'm just a white wall. I might see something on the screen, but it's not going to reproduce on paper, and it won't reproduce when it goes to the printing press. So if I go back to, okay, that number's reading with the card, I'll use the same spot, 230. And if I go without the card on the same spot, I'm reading 238. So by using a little bit of the scrim, the flag, we can actually take some of that light back down. So let's take a look at that final shot and see if we're okay with that. Let's take it back down to full size. And I noticed that, yes, that is a little bit darker right in here, but that I really want to go for the middle and the highlight. I use a rule to expose for the highlights and process for the shadows. If anybody's ever studied Ansel Adams' zone system photography, in black and white photography, we use the term expose for the shadows and then process for the highlights. So Ansel Adams was probably the first people doing what I call real, in a sense, color management, because they were trying to pre-visualize where tones were going, and they were in black and white. So here, it's much more like transparency film. If you wanted to think of it as a film base, it's like transparency film, where we want to bring it up as high as possible without overexposing, but at the same time, I want to make sure I don't overexpose it, because I can't bring those highlights back. In this case, those highlights are as bright as they should be. Now we will say that I can definitely do more to that shoe in post-processing and bring that up. I can reprocess that file a second time and just easily drag the two over, holding my shift key, add a layer mask, and we will actually open up that shoe area so that we have somewhere around 20s and 30s in that shoe. Right now we're only reading 13 and 12. We're not getting the numbers. I mean, up here we are, but down in here, in some of these areas, we're reading 20, 21. It's pretty good, but some of these areas are reading 4 and 5, and I want to be able to pull a little more detail. If an area read 4 or 5, I guarantee you it's just pure black with no texture. So this is some of the areas. We'll, of course, take these images into Photoshop and do a couple more things to this to process this image out. But for right now, in the capture stage, this gives me one really good, clean image that I can use. Now, if I wanted, for any reason, thinking I want to warm up the shot, this would be a good time for me to shoot one more shot of my color passport. I could put that right in here just to get, actually, let me just set this up so it reads better here. I can set that up kind of like in here, and especially, so I think I'm not really worried about these numbers here as much as I'm worried about the actual warm and cool patches, because that way I'm allowed to actually find where neutral is and then warm it up a hair. Because sometimes, especially with portraiture, neutral is great to be neutral for color, but it's just a little bit too warm, or a little bit too cold, excuse me. So product photography, we don't do a lot of this, but I'd like to have the option later to see, oh, by the way, if that shot feels a little too cool to you, this would be like adding an 81A warming filter by just clicking on the cooler white balance target to actually warm up the image. The cooler the target patch, and when you make that neutral, the rest of the shot becomes warm. So let's take one shot just to have that in our files, and we'll take that back into Photoshop and do some more work on it.